I am so excited to be on the air today on our podcast today, Livestream, the Adult in the Room podcast with Victoria Taft. I'm your news Sherpa. And today we're going to talk a little bit about, in fact, we're going to talk a lot about the Minneapolis Border Patrol shooting that left a man dead on the streets of Minneapolis over the weekend. Incredibly sad story. Absolutely. And we want to know what happened. Was that what they call a good shoot, a justifiable shooting? And a question for people who are commenting this afternoon, should ICE or Border Patrol leave Minneapolis, which some people want? Should the president invoke the Insurrection Act at this time, which some people want? And let's see, if you have any experience with the 6-hour P320, we'd appreciate having you weigh in on that as well. I have the best guest ever for this type of a topic, and it's Andrew Branca. The Branca Show, the Andrew Branca Show, you can find that on YouTube and Rumble, I think, too, as well, and everywhere. As well as his Law Self-Defense show that he does here with because he is entirely a guy who has spent his adult life as an attorney litigating these kinds of cases, these self-defense kind of cases. Did this thing happen by the book, etc.? Andrew Branca, welcome back to the Adult in the Room podcast. How are you?
I'm very good. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invite.
I appreciate you coming on. I'm so delighted that you can be here. One of the things I wanted to do while we collect some people here was to make sure that we all have a mutual understanding, okay? A mutual understanding of what it is that is expected of a citizen when they decide that they're going to be some sort of chaos agent for the left. And I guess they can do that as long as they don't break the law. But let's find out what some of the rules of the road are. And we get those rules of the road, if you will, from the Chicago Police Superintendent of all people, who last October laid out what his role as a police officer is. And here's why I want you to see it.
Let me make this clear. Federal agents, ICE, HSI, are officers. They are agents of law enforcement. If you box them in with vehicles, it is reasonable for them to believe that they are being ambushed and that this could end in a deadly situation. And it's reasonable for them to use force based on those conditions. Do not box in any law enforcement officer. You are breaking the law when you do that. And you are putting yourself in danger. Following law enforcement agents around. The question is why? What do you plan on doing? It's also reasonable for them to believe that you're eventually going to do harm to them. If you ram any vehicle, especially that one that contains law enforcement agents, and that's any law enforcement, local, state, federal, county, and you do this intentionally, this is considered deadly force. Deadly force is anything that can cause great bodily harm or death. When you plow into a vehicle that contains law enforcement agents, you're using deadly force. And they can use deadly force in response to stop you. We need to be clear about these laws.
Okay. He goes on, but is that not refreshing to see that in the public at large? Because I don't think people actually know this, Andrew. I really don't.
Yeah, I mean, he's dead on. Everything he said was absolutely correct. So if you create in the minds of armed officers a reasonable perception that you're presenting as a imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury, they're likely to shoot you. They're privileged to shoot you, and that would be a lawful shooting. That's exactly what happened with Alex Preddy.
Well, let's see. What's the difference between Kyle Rittenhouse and Alex Preddy? I'm sure we'll get to that because Andrew said it. And I know he spent some time on that as well on his own shows, and it's an important point. There was really not much analogous. Hey, would you guys knock off the 6-7 stuff? Whatever. Whatever. That's the way I feel about 6-7. Okay, so here we go, and I want to finish up with the Chicago superintendent. I want him to finish his remarks because everything's important. Let's do it.
Now become a society where we just decide to take everything in our own hands and start to commit crimes against law enforcement. It is a crime. You may not like what they're doing. I can understand that there's a lot of emotions out there, but that does not mean that you get to commit a crime, especially one that could lead to deadly force. We need to keep everyone safe.
Okay, we'll leave it there. I just wanted to fish it because I've been promising to play this the last couple of weeks, and I just cannot find it. And so I found it, and I thought, well, you know what? We all need to begin with the same body of knowledge. Okay, that you can't do that. It's your estimation that, of course, Alex Preddy did do that. What do you think he did? I've got video from your stream the other day. And I'll just turn down your volume and have you talk over it to tell people why this is actually, he did the wrong thing.
Yeah, so when the first CBP officer here orders that woman in the white jacket back, she doesn't comply, she gets shoved back, she doesn't comply, she gets pepper sprayed. When Alex Preddy steps in and makes contact with that officer, first of all these people here, all of them that are impeding this law enforcement function, because it's important to understand, they weren't outside a building holding a sign protesting. They're following these officers around from location to location, impeding their ability to carry out their legal duties. That's a federal crime. That's a Class A misdemeanor to which they are subject to arrest by these officers at any time. If they do that conduct, if they impede with contact, they physically contact the officer, that's an 8-year federal felony. Absolutely subject to arrest. And that's what Alex Preddy does here. When he intervenes to impede the ability of that officer to engage with Miss Whitejacket, when he makes contact with that officer, he's just committed a forcible felony good for 8 years in a federal penitentiary. That's why they were subjecting him to arrest. And then, of course, he was non-compliant with arrest. It became a generalized fracas. They discovered his gun. Gun. A shot was fired. Lots of shots were fired. And now he's dead.
Okay, so what you see is not what everybody else sees. What you see is the fact that he also touched the officer and tried to get in the middle of it.
Yep.
Here he is. He's getting in the face of this officer. And in this picture, he actually touches the officer and gets in between him and the woman in the white jacket.
Right.
And
that's
you can't.
Under 18 U.S.C. 111, that is a federal felony good for 8 years in prison.
You cannot do that. Here's another angle of it. A lot of people call it the lady in the pink coat angle. I was hearing a lot about this over the weekend. Let's take a look at it. I'm going to just take these guys. I find that a lot of times the people who do the play-by-play on this stuff are just, what the F? And it's just like, oh, God, you're not helpful. So I just we're done. Okay. So he's down, and then he gets back up. He gets back up on his knees, so he's resisting arrest.
Right.
So not only has he interfered with the officer, impeded the officer in an attempt to stop their operation that day, he's also now resisting arrest.
Correct.
And then what do we find? He's got a gun, and there's no law against having a gun. I mean, and he's got extra mags, and there's no law against having extra mags unless you're a conservative. And so, okay, so what do we know from this situation where you're seeing this? He's on the ground and then he gets shot, and people are looking at it going, he was just murdered.
Yeah, so it's not a murder because the police are legally justified to use deadly force to stop a reasonably perceived imminent threat of deadly force upon them. And that's what Alex Preddy ended up presenting. Now, he may never have any intention to harm any officer. That may have been the case, but it doesn't matter what his state of mind is. Mm-hmm. What matters is the state of mind of the officers who used defensive force. Were the totality of the circumstances such that they had a reasonable perception that he was presenting as an imminent deadly force threat? And what are the key facts here? Well, they already know he's a violent felon because they just watched him commit a felony upon their fellow officer, making contact. Mm-hmm. They know he's non-compliant with arrest. What non-compliant with arrest really means is he's fighting the officers. So they know he's going to fight them. Then they hear the cry of gun, 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 gun. So a gun's in play, what's in their head, and a moment later, they hear a gunshot. And Alex Preddy, when you watch the video, his hand comes out from his waistband into view with an item, a black item in his hand. Now, I don't know what it is. It may be a cell phone. It may be a spare magazine. But in the heat of the moment, to the officers, it looks like he's retrieved a weapon from his waistband. And just because they took his gun off him doesn't mean he's unarmed. I carry a gun every day. It's not the only weapon on my person. You take my gun away, I'm still armed.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if they thought that maybe there would be possibly another weapon. And we don't know what they understood at this point in time.
Well, we know there are other weapons, right? There's at least 3 or 4 or 5 guns within easy reach of Alex Preddy because they're on the officers' belts. Yeah. Right? So officers are not infrequently, when they're shot, it's not unusual for them to be shot with their own gun that a suspect took off their belt. So the guns are in play here.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this. Here we go. I'm going to share my screen. And here we go. No, that's you. Love you, mean it. I don't want you right now.
That's the statute, by the way, that he was violating.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, here we go. It was your book. Okay, but I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to share this tab. Alex Preddy was among 50 anti-ICE protesters who confronted the Border Patrol before the Minneapolis shooting. Furthermore, he also was, just last week, was it, at another confrontation with federal agents just a week before his death. So doesn't that tell you something about his state of mind, Andrew?
Yeah, I think it does. It doesn't influence the decision-making of these officers who shot him unless they were aware of that fact. It's possible they were aware. You know, these semi-professional protesters, they become familiar to the police operating in the area, and the police become familiar to them because they're seeing each other all the time. Mm-hmm. So it's quite possible these officers are like, yeah, we've seen this guy before. He's made contact before. He's caused trouble before. So he's a known character to them. That would feed into their expectations of his behavior this time.
The left says that, or some people on the left say, oh, well, he was just coming out of the donut shop and he ended up on the other side of the street and he was just meandering and not doing anything. No, he was not only a person who had been hurt by the feds the week before for interfering and knew what the cost was. The second time he comes, he's bringing a gun. He's still bringing his gun. And then the other thing is he's on the Signal chat, we find out. He's one of the people on the Signal chat, which we'll get to. But I want to entertain this question because you're just the guy to answer Tyler's question. What's the difference between Kyle Rittenhouse and Alex Preddy? Why did Preddy get shot in the back 6 times after his gun was taken away? Fair enough. I'm sure people have that question.
Yeah, so two separate questions. What's the difference between Kyle and Alex? The difference is that Alex fought the law, and the law won. Kyle didn't do that. When Kyle met up with law enforcement that fateful night in Kenosha, his hands are up in the air, in plain view, completely unthreatening. He didn't fight arrest. He wasn't non-compliant. None of that happened with Kyle. That's why Kyle didn't get shot by police. Alex Preddy decided to fight police under circumstances that created a reasonable perception of a deadly force threat in their minds and got shot as a result. Why did he get shot in the back 6 times after his gun was taken away? First of all, I don't know that that's true. I haven't seen any reports of exactly where he was shot on his body. In terms of the number of shots fired, it's not a case where a single officer is shooting 10 times. There were 10 rounds fired in total. When you have a lot of cops involved, they all have their guns out. It tends to be a case of every cop is firing 2 or 3 rounds, which is what they're trained to do. And it adds up. You have 4 or 5 cops firing 2 or 3 rounds each. You end up with 10, 12, 15 rounds fired. It's completely typical and normal in these kinds of multi-cop situations. Also, we have to keep in mind that all these things have reaction times that take place. So before the first shot is fired, an officer needs to perceive a threat, evaluate it as a threat, make a decision about what to do, present his gun, get it out, press the trigger. That all takes time. It doesn't take much time, but it takes a little bit of time. Maybe it takes a second. Well, when you want to cease using force, you also have to process that decision. You have to recognize that the threat's been neutralized, decide you're going to stop using force, and that takes about a second. Well, it's not hard to fire 5 rounds a second. 0.2 second splits is not at all difficult with a semi-automatic handgun. So what happens is the decision is made to fire lawfully. You fire a shot, the threat's neutralized, and you begin to process that information. And in the process of doing that, another couple rounds get fired. As long as it's one continuous use of force, every one of those shots is legally justified. Normal human beings do not live in a 4K, 60 frames per minute visual world. We're just human beings with response times.
Yeah, so that's how many shots. There were multiple shots in a very quick succession. Were there any pauses? Because as I understand it, that's one of the things that would not redound to the favor of the Border Patrol officers. What about that?
The pauses here are very short. They're generally less than a second in duration. And of course, keep in mind, again, it's not one officer.
Right.
There's a bunch of different officers. They're all seeing different things. They're all processing different perspectives, different bits of information. They've all seen different things leading up to the moment they made the decision to fire. They're all firing based on different stimuli that they've observed. Sometimes it's that other police are firing. Officers are allowed to rely on the presumptively reasonable decision-making of their fellow officers. So one cop shouts gun and fires, his partner can fire too. His justification is that his partner has already begun to shoot at this guy and presumably has perceived a reasonable perceived threat of death or serious bodily injury. So every officer is going to have a slightly different answer to the question, what was it that you saw that created a reasonable perception of an imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury? But they'll all have one. It'll vary depending upon the particular individual.
I think that a lot of people, I'm seeing a lot of comments here, and I figured I would get those comments. Imagine being such a goon, you try to justify this. There's no way to justify this, bro. He was murdered, you a-hole. ICE clapped another person in Arizona, and on and on and on. But here's the actual question. When these people assume that this guy should have been able to interfere with the cop, should have been able to resist arrest, should have been able to get in the way of their discussion and or action with another person on the street, one of his comrades, as it turned out. And so that means that it, in all likelihood, will be a justifiable shoot. And I'm sorry that if you don't want to get murdered, don't interfere with the cops. It's simple. It's just that simple, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is akin to, I hear people say things like, well, even if he was guilty of that federal felony, that impeding statute, it's only 8 years in prison. It's not a death penalty crime. He doesn't deserve to be killed for that. But that's asking the wrong question. It's not a matter of whether or not someone deserves to die. It's like if someone stumbles out of a bar drunk and gets in their sports car and drives down a ice-covered road at 150 miles an hour, that doesn't get you the death penalty either. Drunk driving, reckless drunk driving is not a death penalty offense, but none of us would be surprised if he crashes and dies in the crash. You take a bath with a plugged-in toaster, that's not a death penalty crime, but you shouldn't be surprised if you get electrocuted and die. You fight the police while you're armed, you shouldn't be surprised if you end up getting shot.
So we've got lots of these kind of comments. He was trying to protect an innocent woman. He didn't touch his gun.
Yeah, it just doesn't matter. So what he was trying to do doesn't matter. His state of mind doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is the state of mind of the officer who made the decision to use force. And he doesn't need to touch his gun to present as a deadly force threat. Plenty of people present as a deadly force threat. They don't have a gun at all. That's no different than him having his gun taken away.
Why don't people understand that?
Well, they don't want to. So
Yeah.
they've made an emotional. First of all, arguably, it's a bad outcome case. And what I mean by that, it's likely that it wasn't, in fact, necessary to shoot this guy because he was not intending to harm any other officers. That's quite possible. Maybe the thing in his hand was just his phone. Maybe he was just, he was resisting arrest, but he wasn't planning to injure anybody. That could all be true, but it doesn't matter. What matters is how the officers perceived his conduct. In the context of all the information they have, the shouts of gun, his noncompliance, the felony he committed on another officer, the sound of the gunshot, and his hand comes from his waistband with an item in it. Folks, if you're interacting with police in any hostile manner, your hands better be empty. If they see anything in your hand, they may well believe that it's a weapon and conduct themselves accordingly.
Here's another common one. ICE agents aren't even trained.
Yeah, I think we're all calling these guys ICE because it's easy. I do it too. I think technically they're Customs and Border Patrol.
Yeah, these are Border Patrol guys.
The ICE guys are very well trained. Customs and Border Patrol are even more trained. In fact, Customs and Border Patrol has an elite level of officers called BORTAC, Border Tactical Officers, that are amongst the very highest level of tactical training.
They all shot him and murdered him. They escalated this. What a moron this jerk is. I guess I'm a jerk too. I'm a moron and a jerk. So,
by the way, the police are allowed to escalate. You and the police are not on the same playing field when it comes to the privilege to initiate and escalate use of force. They're allowed to use force to compel compliance with the law. That's what law enforcement is. You're not allowed to initiate a use of force as a non-officer, but an officer is. What we saw here is the Border Patrol officer orders the woman in the white jacket back. She doesn't want to do that. That's the force continuum. They start with verbal commands. If you don't obey the verbal commands, they'll use force. They'll push you back. If you don't obey that, they'll escalate to chemical irritants, OC spray, to compel compliance. But they're allowed to use force to compel your compliance with lawful orders. And one of those lawful orders is they're engaged in a police action. They're allowed to maintain a zone of security around where they're working. They can order people to move further back. And the easiest way to make sure someone knows where you want them to stand is not to tell them, move 18 inches back on the street. That's very ambiguous. Just tell them, get on the sidewalk. Get out of the street, get on the sidewalk. It's very clear cut. And if they're not willing to do that, you're allowed as an officer to compel them to do that.
And pushing is okay.
Yes.
If they're interfering with you, yeah, they can push you. Sorry, guys, they can push you. It's not pretty. It doesn't look pretty on a camera, but it's legal. So what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Here's one. Petty was conspiring with other domestic terrorists on the anti-ICE signal chat to actively obstruct federal law enforcement operations while armed without ID. That's 4 charges before anything else. Okay. So what was it? A $25 fine if he didn't have his ID and along with his concealed weapons permit?
Yeah, I mean, I don't care about that. If it were up to me, no law-abiding, mentally sound American would require any ID to carry a gun around. So I don't care that he didn't have his permit on him, except that it goes to a certain state of mind. The real issue with not having the permit is not really the permit. It just indicates that he's one of these semi-professional interferers, protesters, impeders, because that's what they do. They intentionally leave their wallets home, their ID home, so they can't be readily identified if they're grabbed by the cops.
Yeah, no pocket litter, guys. That's what they're told. They are actually instructed to do that. There's plenty of instruction, actually, around that. Let's see, a couple of other things, and we talked a little bit about the conspiracy, and make sure I get this, share this tab instead. All right, so here we have a story, and Andrew, I wanted to talk a little bit conspiracy because we have several, and the Insurrection Act, because we have several people on this signal chat who it turns out a couple of them work for the government. One's elected, one's the lieutenant governor who's been outed as one of those on the signal chat. At least they've confirmed it. Leftists have confirmed it. that she's been outed, and other stories now reflect that. So what you have here is not just attacks on officers, but you've got planned attacks on officers that are being coordinated by some people who are on the Signal chat, who are in public life. That's pretty ridiculous.
Well, it's insurrection, is what it is.
It is insurrection.
Yep.
I mean, honestly, and he did it before. So we know he did it before. He came last week, got a broken rib for his trouble. Now, this week, this last couple of days. And so what we have is a guy who's he obviously knew what he was getting himself into, because he came and did it again. And he's part of the Signal chat, as well as the Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, and also another woman who is a direct report, or at least when he's running for election. I guess he's not running for election. Who was part of the Signal chat as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, Minneapolis and Minnesota may as well just be firing on Fort Sumter at this point. This is state level insurrection against the democratically elected federal government.
What needs to happen now? So I know some people are in the military, are preparing to do some police work, if you will, and that sort of thing, so that they can be ready for it. But do you really think he'll do it? We had one of our friends of the show last week talked about how he was a former federal prosecutor. And he goes, yes, this all matches up. It's insurrection. That's what's going on. But do you really want to invoke the Insurrection Act when it's 12 degrees outside and they're freezing their fannies off? I mean, do you really want to do that? Or do you just want to fizzle out? And so if they're not fizzling, they're just getting stronger now. So I think that insurrection is a very probable outcome here. Likelihood of invoking the act.
I mean, there's political cost to invoking the Insurrection Act, right? But we seem to think of it as this super extreme thing. I mean, President George Washington invoked the Insurrection Act to put down the Whiskey Rebellion, literally got on his high horse and led men into combat against the Whiskey Rebellion under the authority of the Insurrection Act. So it feels like an old-timey law, right? A relic of the past, something super extreme. But it's not. The Insurrection Act has been invoked dozens of times by dozens of presidents in our history. The only thing that's unusual about the Insurrection Act in 2026 is we're actually in the longest period of American history in which the Insurrection Act has not been invoked. It's unusual that it hasn't been invoked in this long a period of time.
Mm-hmm. There have been, I saw online, one of the, was on the X feed, a guy who's looked at all the places where these acts have occurred, where they've
It might have been me. I did a show on that.
Oh, okay. Well, excellent. Okay. So 9 counties, right? In 9 counties in the country are responsible for the vast majority of the crimes against the Border Patrol, ICE, and other feds. I mean, of all people, Portland, Oregon. I can't believe Minneapolis is outdoing them, frankly, but that's pretty amazing, isn't it? Where you can just now drive down to the very county level and say, okay, these people, in fact, not only are causing, they're insurgents, that's what appears to be happening, and we have some talk about that, but also that they are, they can be defined so quickly as certain pockets. You'd think that Trump would just do that and put it down, as he did, for example, not using the insurgency, or correction, but like in Los Angeles when he sent the National Guard and the Marines in. I mean, he could have done that. He could do that, and then they have backup for the federal officers who are doing immigration work, and they can't allow they will not allow the other people to attack them as they have, or attack their hotel as they have. Makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, that's the advantage of invoking the Insurrection Act. The disadvantage is once you've invoked it, right? So it's not a threat you can use anymore. Like the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals just, I think yesterday, overturned a federal court judge order limiting how ICE could defend themselves. And there's no doubt in my mind that the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals, when they reversed that judge, they were like hearing the helicopters of the Insurrection Act being invoked. One of the reasons they did it so quickly is they can see the Insurrection Act coming and they don't want it. So Trump's using it as a threat right now. Once you actually invoke it, it's not a threat anymore. You'll get all the, of course, legacy media calling you, no kings. He's a dictator. He's a tyrant. You'll get all that kind of nonsense. So Trump's, I guess, waiting for a certain threshold of horror and violence before he's going to expend that political capital and invoke the Insurrection Act. I'm not sure what he needs to see anymore. Certainly, he has every justification he could need to have invoked the Insurrection Act long before now. But for whatever reason, he's making the calculus, presumably him and Stephen Miller and others are making the calculus that it's not yet quite time.
Well, there's the signal and the noise, right? So there's the signal that we see coming out of Minneapolis is the fact that there's a bunch of fraud, billions of dollars of fraud, and the attachment to all of that fraud, the people who've been elected, Tim Walz, Jacob Fry, Fry's wife, and all the sorts of other people who are tangentially and otherwise connected, Ilhan Omar, et cetera. And so I kind of wonder if he's waiting for something on that, because I would wait for that. I would wait to find out if there are charges or if there's any kind of a grand jury that's been convened to look into charges against these people, and then do that at such time, because there's going to be riots if these people do not get their money from the state. There will be hell to pay, and they will cause more riotous behavior. And here's a question: have you noticed any rioters who were upset over their daycare centers being closed?
Yeah, right. There's no parents screaming they don't have daycare for their children. Right?
No. And that shooting happened along that avenue, just a mile away from where the Quality Leering Center was once. I just thought that maybe there might have been another reason why they were on that street as well. I just was kind of curious about what their initial operation was to be there in the first place, that people... Now, the other thing is...
I suspect that if there's a shooting anywhere in the city of Minneapolis, and you go stand in the spot of that shooting and look around 360 degrees, you'll find these bogus daycare centers. They're everywhere.
Yeah, well... And they're in many different states as well. Now, here's a couple other things I wanted to bring you to your attention. No, you've already know some of this stuff, but I am going to... Here we go with the Signal Chat information, which Cam Higbee was the first to present to lots of people just over the weekend, and that was the fact that, or just a couple of days ago, and that was the fact that these people were on a Signal Chat, which is, there's no law against that. You can be on a Signal Chat, but they were planning to ambush, if you will, these officers, and they would get them to a place where they felt the ICE officers were very quickly. They could do that very quickly. All right, fair enough. And then they would impede them. So that's conspiracy, right?
It certainly is.
Now, here's another thing I want to just show you. I wanted you to see this. They're so proud of themselves for getting people out and quickly. And here's a woman who undoubtedly was part of the Signal Chat. She's talking about how quickly they get people out.
In Minneapolis right now are unmatched. For all other cities who have not yet been invaded by ICE like our city, 3,000 or more ICE agents abducting people on every block. Y'all need to take notes. Rapid response, hyper local. The chats that we have are of our street, then of our neighborhood, and the other neighborhood chats connect. If an ICE agent pulls up in my neighborhood, within 2 minutes, there are legal observers, people on bikes, people in cars ready to follow the ICE agent back out of the neighborhood and let the next neighborhood know that that ICE agent is on the move. Y'all, this is crazy. This is the future of the downfall of the empire. You need to get to know your neighbors and your city, and you need to be familiar with the people that will protect you in the same ways that you will protect them, y'all. This is insane.
Okay, so there she is. She's laying it out. Carlin Bursenko put that out on Twitter over X over the weekend, and I thought she was pretty interesting, just to give us some insights into what they do to organize themselves. Now that we've seen Cam Higbee's chat, his entire thread of the Signal Chat, It's pretty damning, I would say.
These are effectively paramilitary forces now. They're well-trained, they're well-resourced, they work cooperatively in large numbers. They have an infrastructure like the signal chat and other infrastructure. And unfortunately, the solution to an insurgent paramilitary is not law enforcement. The solution to an insurgent paramilitary is counterinsurgency, is your own military.
So these are the revolutionaries. These are the people, the commies, the far lefties, the folks who salute to and they're communists. That's what they are. That's what's going on. And now I want to be a counter-revolutionary. The revolutionaries, they are people who mean us harm. They don't like Western civilization. They don't like people who think that there's a God. I mean, there are all kinds of reasons why they don't get along with Western society. I guess perhaps that they're just nihilist boobs. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean they're religious zealots. It's just that their religion is progressive fascism.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Let's see. Tom Holman is coming back. Greg's back on the border. Tom Holman's taking over. Tom will crack the whip. And Timmy has agreed to turn over illegals. I don't believe that he will do that for 1 minute. What do you think, Andrew?
Well, it's a little complicated. Even if he wants to, he's not in control of all the illegals that are in detention, right? Tim Walz only controls the state prisons. Mm-hmm. But a lot of these people are being held by sheriffs. They're being held by local police departments and local jail facilities. And Tim Walz doesn't have direct control over those. So
right. Yeah, his Wall Street Journal op-ed was obviously in sort of an attempt to just sort of disguise what the real problem is. Tim, it's not the state prisons. You guys are pretty good on the state prisons. The problem is the county jails. Why don't you get off your yes and start ordering people to give information about people who have ICE detainers on them so that they could be kicked out of the country? Why are they so proud of sex offenders, Andrew Branca?
Well, I mean, from the Democrats. So what the Democrats are really doing is they're importing a new constituency. The American body politic won't vote for them anymore. They're a 20% party. So they're importing third worlders to become dependent on the government, reliably voting Democrats to replace the American citizen in our electoral process. So they can't afford to lose these people. If the immigration stops, if this population does not enter the country, the Democrat Party as it currently exists is completely non-viable as a political entity. So it's an existential threat to them as a political force if these migrants are moved out. And they don't want to distinguish between purportedly good migrants who are just here looking to improve their lives and the criminals, because a lot of them are criminals. So they don't want to have a process where we're filtering people out and removing large numbers of any of them. They want more to come in, if anything. And it's inconsequential to their political interest whether the third worlders are criminals or not. Remember, Tim Walz is never going to be subject to an illegal migrant crime. This doesn't affect him personally. These people who are making these decisions, they're all protected. It's the rest of us who have to suffer under this.
Yeah. Here's this one. You highlighted this one on your stream. Protesters in Minneapolis could well have access to the city's network of 300 plus AI-powered automatic license plate recognition cameras. And this is what explains, he believes, why they've gotten so quickly behind the different vehicles that have come into town. They found Cam Higby's car like that, his rented car like that, when they were chasing him. And I think that's what's going on, right?
I think that's pretty clearly the case. I think they found a lot of signal data that had this license plate information on it. The only place that could come from would be the state, which of course has all these scanners hooked up to an AI system that just processes everything like that. So someone's made a decision to share this with these insurrectionists.
Mm-hmm. And that is conspiracy. Okay, a few more things. Let's see. Things preferably that don't have F words in them. They're passing laws. They're passing laws to give ICE more leeway. No, what's happening with ICE is wrong. Okay, well, thank you. Okay. Honey, did you miss Elon's salute? Brother. I mean, come on. Yeah. Okay. Well, Tim Walz did the same one. So Democrats are becoming terrorists. That's kind of silly, but it's true.
Yeah, yeah, of course. They're trying to induce terror to drive ICE out of their jurisdiction.
So to reiterate, this was a justifiable shoot. People don't want to receive it. They don't understand what the rules are for police officers.
And they don't care. They just want their side to win, right? So the people who are sympathetic with the anti-ICE folks, they just want their side to win. Their side lost. Alex Preddy got killed. So they don't like it. It's a bad outcome for them politically. And they're not trying to reason through whether this was a justified shoot or not. Their guy lost, and therefore it's a bad shoot. That's all that matters to them. They're not looking at this rationally, analytically. They're looking at this emotionally.
Yeah, well, exactly. There's some of the information that was shared online. Yet again, X has just been an amazing resource. And that is this, for example, I don't know, I'm sure you've probably seen this. Did you see that creepy guy who's from the Southern Poverty Law Center who's training people? And
I did see that clip, yeah.
Yeah, that guy's that is some strange stuff. Urging people, I mean, it's almost as if he was trying to hypnotize them. I mean, I hate to say that because it sounds ridiculous, but I really do believe that is what he was trying to do. Anyway, I can't find that at the moment, so that's all right. I'll just bring it up later. But so tell people not to jump off the roof. That's it. All right. Oh yes, 100% an insurrection. Hope he can walk. We can talk again soon. I'm going to tune in for a bit. Okay, well, thank you very much. Are these people not domestic of the Constitution by definition? Yeah, they are.
Yes, they're in insurrection against a democratically elected federal government. Of course, they're anti-constitution.
Waltz caved and Trump won in court this morning. I don't think Waltz caved on anything. I really honestly don't think he caved on anything. So I don't, because I don't believe him. I honestly don't. I mean, he was just yesterday talking about how Anne Frank, the story of Anne Frank is something that they will say about the children who have been victimized in these ICE raids. I mean, that's ridiculous and offensive. Yeah, exactly.
I think he's trapped. I think all these Minnesota politicians are trapped. I think they've all been thoroughly corrupt. They've taken a ton of money out of the system. And the only thing that can save them is if nobody looks. But if people are going to look, they're going to find the fraud. And then they're going to go to federal prison.
Yeah, that's what this really is. It's the difference between the signal and the noise. The signal's all the fraud, all of that. And the noise are the rabble on the streets doing this very thing. Do you think people get it besides us?
Yeah. I mean, my community gets it. I'm sure your community gets it.
Oh, I don't know. I'm looking at this chat is wild. Yeah. We are hypocrites, apparently. The CIA knows about a lot of things. Why aren't there any actions being taken against Minnesota license plate readers for being used against ICE? I have no idea. I mean, why would the CIA involve itself in domestic affairs anyway? She asked hypothetically, because obviously that's happened before. You know, that brings up another thing. For example, Tom Homan has talked about keeping track of people who have operated against ICE. These people who are on the streets and who are they are intentionally bird dogging ICE officers and trying to interfere. And so, how is it that these guys can continue? I just lost my question. I'm sorry. I just completely lost my point of thought. But I tell you what I will do. I will reach it. January guns at January 6th to kill children. Okay, whatever. Silly man. Everyone carry to protest. Second Amendment is your right. Yeah. But Andrew, you wouldn't carry to a protest, would you? And you carry a day.
Yeah, I mean, if you saw me at a protest, I'd be carrying, just because I carry a gun every day. But I've managed to carry a gun every day for several decades and never come close to having to actually use it because I don't go to dangerous places.
You think he was stupid to bring his gun?
I think he was stupid to fight police.
Yeah.
So again, he wasn't shot because he was exercising his Second Amendment rights. He wasn't shot because he was wearing pants. Those are
Right.
true facts, but that's not why they shot him. They shot him because he presented as a reasonably perceived imminent unlawful threat of death or serious bodily injury. That gets you shot.
Yeah. Was January 6th an insurrection?
A weird insurrection. It's so funny. I mean, just the fact that we call it January 6th, it was a single day. That's not much of an insurrection, right? This has been going, the anti-ICE efforts have been going on for months. January 6th, by its very name, was a single day. In fact, it was only a few hours. I mean, what we would characterize as violence began about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. By 5 o'clock in the afternoon, everybody was going home. That's an odd insurrection. Odd insurrection at the most armed civilian populace on the planet came unarmed to overthrow the federal government. That seems a little unusual.
Don't you have to be armed for an insurrection? These guys are.
Well, you have to be using force, and the other side has guns, so presumably you would bring your own guns if you were tending to overthrow the government.
Got a request to play the video again so that we can see what's going on. He's making contact here,
Right.
and here is a close up. This is he's getting in the grill of the ICE or the Border Patrol agent. Okay, and so he's interfering when this officer here attempts to move in on this woman who's also interfering with the officer. And people say, well, he was just trying to help that woman. In what way? She'd already been, in what way? I would like to know. He's not
She's only being subject to lawful force by that officer. You're not allowed to defend someone from lawful force being exerted by an officer. You're simply not privileged to do that.
Here's this is the so-called pink coat lady video, because there's a pink lady with a pink coat in there. Sorry about the quality of this video here. I'll start it over. And what we have here is that we have all of the officers who came to the other officer's aid. They get him down, and then here he gets up again, not on his feet, on his knees. He's resisting openly, obviously resisting arrest. And his gun was taken.
Well, a gun was taken.
Right.
Again,
Well, I guess
just
we don't
because
really
he took
know.
his gun doesn't mean he's unarmed. It just means you took one gun off his person.
I'm glad you said that. I just have to remind myself of that he had other means to do harm to the officers as well, if he wanted to. Where's the gun? Where's the gun? It's probably taken into evidence. And let's not forget that the man who was shot was part of a secret chat coordinating with state officials. We have not forgotten that. And we have not forgotten that. He was part of a conspiracy as well. And the conspiracy, Andrew, was a conspiracy run by the lieutenant governor of the state of Minnesota, or at least she was the person in charge of that signal chat that Cam Higbee got a look at.
Right. So we need to keep in mind, anytime we talk about conspiracy, it's a conspiracy to commit a crime. Right, so there needs to be some underlying predicate crime. Conspiracy to embezzle money. Conspiracy to murder someone. Conspiracy here to impede the federal government in the exercise of its immigration authority.
Yeah.
So it certainly appears when you have this coordinated signals trap with, it appears, senior level state government officials actively participating and leading it, that you have a state level insurrection against the federal government, much like firing on Fort Sumter triggered off the Civil War.
This is really scary now, isn't it? Do you think these are pretty scary times, right? But we actually can't let the left win this one and then retreat. I know some very smart people that I trust have said, no, tactical retreat, let's get out. And then let's send in the attorneys. But who's going to protect the attorneys? You're going to still have to do the insurrection, protect the attorneys, right?
Right.
And the attorneys have got to go in there. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I'd rather listen to you.
The other side, the progressive fascists, the anti-ICE paramilitary forces are very clear. They are prepared to fight. They are fighting. And the side, victory will always go to the side that is determined to win, even through violence, rather than to the side that just wants to be left alone. Okay,
I'm going to put this to the people who keep calling us lying sacks of bleep. Look. And how we were reported for rhetoric poor rhetoric spelled. And I'd just like to tell you that you just saw the video. And I want to tell you that if you just saw the video not once, twice, and it's still, he is fighting the officers. He is resisting arrest. In fact, he is resorting to the level of his training, which he was trained to do in his little classes that they teach. So that's what was going on there, folks. That's not a lie. It's just that you can't do that with someone who is trying to do the jobs and happens to be armed. A federal officer. You just can't do that. How many times do you have to hear that? How is it that you've never heard that? How is it that you think that is lying? You know what's more concerning to me? The fact that you don't know. The fact that you don't know. That's ridiculous. Lying sack of blood. This is a neo-Confederacy. Oh, please. Just, oh, please. Come on.
Are we really going to lose to these people?
I mean, the thing is that they've got so much cannon fodder out there that are lying and who would do anything. Or liberals are the enemy, says this guy. Yeah, well, it sure seems like it. The far left is the enemy. Oh, Ty King's out there. Hey, Ty. Hey, nice. Yeah, we're not the enemy. Not y'all. That is so true. So thank you from Build Baby Build. Ty King, I love you guys. Thanks so much. Boy, he's changed. He's a former member of Antifa. And he's come around quite a bit, I'll say. And has decided that, move to Texas, that'll do it. Moved from Oregon to Texas and grew a brain and started looking at the law. The law will set you free. What do you think is the most misunderstood part of this entire latest episode here?
I think a lot of these people think they're entitled to do what they're doing. It's certainly morally entitled. They believe they're fighting for the side of light, and so that gives them a very almost a biblical like justification for almost anything that they do. Right? They're fighting against literally the H guy, right? I won't say it because YouTube doesn't like it, but they believe they're fighting the forces of evil. They've been brainwashed and propagandized into believing that. That's why they fight so viciously. That's why they commit so many resources. That's why, it's cold in Minneapolis, and these people are out there every day in the cold doing this. So they are determined to win.
They're organizers who are well plussed up in their bank accounts from billionaires. But not everybody out there is making bank. They're not all getting paid. There are some people who are just true believers who maybe their gas paid for and they get out there, or maybe they're a hotel. One of the other things that is just so disturbing, and being from Portland and not living there now, thank God, but is just the constant attacks on people who report about them, and people, for example, in Minneapolis, who go to the hotels and commit acts of violence there. And what do you think they would do, Andrew, if they did get a hold of a person who was a HSI or FBI or immigration?
Well, we know they kill, right? They killed Charlie Kirk. They'll kill others if they have the opportunity to do it.
Yeah. The left is just making a louder noise, but they're making it up as they go. I think just based on that whole Signal chat, the fact that we know a lot more about the organization, I don't think they're making it up as they go. I think they've studied the playbook, right?
Yeah. This is a very well-structured insurgency against the federal government.
Laura Ingraham was right to call it, when this thing came out, right? She said, no, this is an insurgency. She went there and she goes, no, that's what it is. That's exactly what it is. And it's pretty frightening, frankly. And now we've got people who've been in the military who said, look, this is exactly what's happening here. He's seen it in Iraq. He's seen it in different areas, and he's studied it, and they use some of the same techniques, and it's absolutely frightening. We've got a lot of people here. We have a, let's see, I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to show you a picture of Yet another person who is an elected official. Minnesota State Representative Brad Tabke personally sending out the invites for the anti-ICE watch group on sign up to coordinate doxing and harassment of ICE officials. And he's elected. It's just amazing. It's just amazing. Just amazing. Well, folks, that's it. It's getting crazy out there. Let's see. Blue Size says, I think a lot of it is not wanting to believe that there's a domestic terrorism from U.S. citizens. Yeah, I mean, I think that's true too. I don't think people want to know that. I think, in fact, I really think that, here's President Trump, right? He hasn't really hesitated to go into Iran. He didn't hesitate to go into Venezuela. He didn't hesitate to help out against the fight against Hamas. And they sort of see him hesitating here. Does that bother you?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I don't know the inner workings of what's happening at the White House, right? I would say this. If you can't show your team, I mean, the best thing to show your team is just outright political victories, right? If you can't show your team that, you have to be able to show incremental victories. You have to be able to show that you're making progress. And by team, I mean, how do you get your team to turn out for the midterm so you don't lose government power and the Democrats get back in charge and they just import 200 million third worlders next time around? You have to be able to show incremental wins at least. And he's got a lot of foreign policy wins. But you don't win elections in America on foreign policy. You just don't. People ask themselves, how does my life look better? How do my prospects look better? Is my team getting wins that I can observe in the world around me, not in Venezuela or elsewhere? And if you don't show those incremental wins, it's not so much that your team will vote for the other guy. They just won't show up for you. And that's how you lose elections. The winner is the guy who gets his team to show up.
He closed down the border, right? He closed down the border. And do you think they're building a wall there now? Do you think the wall's done? Do you think that's happening? Because it would be a pretty good time to do that, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is we flew in a lot of these people. So a wall wouldn't help. If you put the Democrats back in charge,
That's true.
The fact that you have a wall is going to be inconsequential. They'll bust them in. They'll open up the gate.
Yeah. Andrew, thank you so much for your time. You've been so generous with it today, and I appreciate it very much. And we'll do it again, I hope, and we'll see each other down the road. He is the man who brought you The Law of Self-Defense. And you read this book and find out what your rights and responsibilities are as a gun owner and concealed carry owner as well. And lesson number 1 is get the hell out as fast as possible. How about that? That's not the way he put it. That's the way I'll put it for him. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. What else do you have going on?
Have fun.
Okay, thank you.
People, you can just follow me on the Branca Show. If you're on X, and if you're not on X, you're doing it wrong. But if you're on X, at the Branca Show on YouTube, on Rumble, on Locals, we're pretty much all over the place. And if you bother looking for me, you'll find me because I'm everywhere.
He's everywhere. He is everywhere. Thank you again, Andrew Branca. Thank you so much. Okay, so there was a guy who was a former special forces warrant officer who was out on X talking about this kind of thing, what was going on, what he was seeing in Minnesota. And he said, as a former special forces warrant officer with multiple rotations running counterinsurgency ops, both hunting insurgents and trying to separate them from sympathetic populations. That's interesting. I've been organized resistance up close, from Anbar to Helmand Province. Oh, that's actually misspelled, I think. The pattern is similar: spotters, cutouts, dead drops, or modern equivalents. Disciplined comms, role specialization, willingness to absorb casualties while bleeding the stronger force slowly. And in a way, that's what he sees is going on in Minneapolis. And I believe that the people who are organizing this from the top down, they don't give a flying flip who's dead. They just love the optics. See, it's making them look bad because somebody died. They don't care where the ICE or immigration officers or HSI or FBI are doing anything. They don't care. They're just going to go interfere. And so they do. And they know, they should know on their handout, the manual, because they all have manuals, right? They've got canon, they have meetings, they have communications, they have lore, they have all kinds of things which connote them as an organized group, especially in this case. And they're conspiring to do something wrong. But one of the things that they say, in their handbook, let's see, I want to make sure I've got it. Oh yeah, here we go. Anti-ICE training manual. Here is one comment out of all this. And it is to don't get in their way. Don't intercede, interfere. And which I find hilarious, frankly. Okay, and it actually shows up here. So what do you mean don't interfere? Because you're going to get hurt. That's why. Don't interfere. But de-escalate. There's no de-escalating. To stop violence against neighbors, you can't de-escalate. If you de-escalate, you're getting in their way. In all likelihood, they say de-escalate. Oh, okay. How does one go about doing that? To de-escalate when they're busting a person who's a child predator? I mean, what is that? Or somebody who is on the lam for another reason, What should you look for? Are they in clothing or uniform? Yeah. Who else you might see? Username. They're telling you to get into Signal organization, a Signal chat. Record everything. Make sure you have enough battery on your phone. Capture landmarks and street signs, which is what the lady in the pink coat did as well. I mean, she was mentioning this. That's why everybody knows to ask for that video. And asking for the video, you see that. And how is it nobody sees that guy resisting arrest? How is that? Anyway, whistles, bring noisemakers. Let's see, video camera, what should be in your go bag. Video camera, phone camera, state or government ID. They're not showing up with any of that. This guy who was shot over the weekend, who had been previously in a scuffle with the feds the week before, so they knew who he was, actually. So they had Tom Homan, who's coming to town, says that they are going to keep track of these people. And I'm just thinking, can they do that? Because remember all the fallout from COINTELPRO, you kind of wonder if you could do that. But apparently they can. They did it to the J6ers, so I guess it's all anything's okay these days as long as it's they already approved it, right? Flyers and tape, flashlight, phone is fine. Let's see what else. I'm just trying to find out what that one sentence where they said, don't interfere, poop. Of course they want you to interfere. That's the point. That's the point of them doing this. Okay. Yeah. Oh, I love this comment. I'm not going to show it or highlight it. It's if you have a raping pedophile in the White House, okay, prove it. You just do that. And let me know how that works out for you. CNN had to spend $15 million because they said stupid stuff like that. CNN then put on that kid who said something similar, like the president was a pedophile. And he was never charged with anything. He has not been to Pedophile Island. But your president has. Give examples of tyrannical government. Better yet, define don't tread on me. Well, don't tread on me. In fact, don't tread on the cops either. You can't. I will tell you this, and this is something you should look for. Let's see. Hold on. ICE warrants. This was a piece in the Wall Street Journal over the weekend. My aunt made sure I saw it. Wall Street Journal's not allowing me to do what I want and to read this in any form or fashion. But what it does, how the deep state thwarted ICE for years. And it is on the op-ed page, so opposite of the editorial. That's what op-ed means. And it's physically in the paper where it is. It's a person who is the Homeland Security General Counsel. That means that this person's a lawyer. And this guy talks about the warrant situation, which we talked about last week. And in the warrant situation, what? You're not seeing me in the stream room. What are you talking about? I'm right here. Everybody can you see me? Can everybody see me? Anyway, so I'm hoping that, hoping I'm there. I just got a note from Alex. But anyway, he talks about the kinds of different, that was it. Okay. He's about the kinds of different warrants that one would have. They can actually do everything on administrative warrants. Hate to break it to you. Yeah. I mean, wouldn't we all like to have judicial warrants for everything? But you know what? When you've had your current deportation order, you've already had your due process, and that's what they're doing. And in some of these orders, going to grab these guys, they've already had their due process. That's how that works, right? And they can do, he says, with administrative warrants, because there's no presumption of full citizenship rights by people who are not citizens of this country. That's his argument here in this piece here in the Wall Street Journal over the weekend. And it's pretty spot on. I mean, he's the guy who makes the rules, right? And by that, I mean, interprets the rules that they follow. He's the general counsel. He's the guy who says, okay, these rules apply. Okay, X is Nazi propaganda. Oh, okay, whatever you say. No, nothing. These people protesting are not killing Minnesotans. People protesting are not killing Minnesotans. Well, of course, the people who are the illegal aliens are, but there you go. They don't care about that. I already said that, sorry. Let's see, if people protecting are killing Minnesotans. That is true. Couple more here. We get everything back in the midterms. Donald is toast. I hope not, because I really feel like the American population needs to see this through. Lots going on. We need to not give over huge cities and swaths of our GDP to people who are ripping us off. See, that's what I think is really what's going on. We talk about the signal and the noise. And I don't mean the signal chat. I mean the signal and noise. And that is the original signal. Don't ever lose sight of the fact that there is a huge amount of fraud going on in concert with the Democratic Party. I believe it sure looks like what's going on with this anti-ICE stuff is with the Democratic Party, for sure. And commies, et cetera, DSA, et cetera. And so that is really what is at issue. What's really at issue. The other thing that you realize in the way this has come down is that the folks, the AG and Secretary of State in the state of Minnesota said, refused to let the United States Civil Rights Office at the DOJ have access to the voter records. The feds have a right to the information, the voter rolls, to find out how many fraudulent people there are, and to compare and contrast them to Social Security, and to compare and contrast them to the list of dead people in the United States of America and people who have been deported from the United States of America. We do have a lot of illegal voters, but they're voter impersonation voters. When people say nobody was ever arrested for voter fraud, very few people are, because usually it's done as an impersonation. That's one of the main people who knows, I would say, probably the second to the most information about voter integrity in the country, from California, who told me that. She goes, it's really not that. It's ripping off people's votes, etc. That's not the biggest thing. Vote impersonation. So I'm not going to count my chickens before they're hatched. Nope. Or are you talking about Donald Trump may be referring to Curley, said that Donald is toast. Well, that's why he's, I would say this. Usually presidents do lose the first midterm election of presidency, and this being the second time that Donald Trump has been in the White House. This might sort of count for another, here we go, another chapter of his presidency, and he's going to lose. Possibly. If people engage, he won't. But they've got to engage, and they've got to see this situation in Minnesota for what it is. This is a huge line in the sand. Why do you think all of those people have come to Minnesota to fight ICE? Why do you think that is? This isn't just in Minnesota. This isn't just for Minnesota. It's for the Democrat Party. And as to the extent that they even care about the Democrat Party, they do certainly care about the fact that the far left has taken over the Democrat Party. It is their party now. Some people say, MAGA, MAGA's in charge of the Republicans. Yeah, I would say that's probably true at the moment, for sure. And the DSA has taken over, and the Communist Party have combined to take over the Democrats. So that happened. That has happened. Yeah. Okay, this is true. What about the innocent citizens being locked up in processes? The innocent citizens? The innocent citizens who have been arrested, that, I'm sure there are mistakes made. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure. But the so-called innocent citizens of the United States who have been arrested are by and large people who have tried to take out an ICE agent, hit an ICE agent, or, one of the federal officers. They get arrested for that. This guy would have gotten arrested if he hadn't been shot. Yeah. So I'm just take a look at the shooting. I talked to people over the weekend, and I said, I have not seen any of the videos. I don't want to know until I look at the video. And I'm like, I called it. I knew this guy resisted arrest, and he did. And then what does he do? Not only does he resist arrest, Andrew pointed this out. He holds back the Border Patrol agent. It's like, dude, you can't do that. Why are you doing that? Here we go. Let's watch. Here's this. This is after he holds back the Border Patrol agent. Now, so this is going to get close up, and this is the supposedly smoking gun. Well, in fact, there's no smoking gun. This is the other thing I was going to ask him about, and that is, so he's still fighting. He gets over, then he comes up to his knees. You can't do that, you guys. I'm sorry. You cannot resist arrest. If you think you've been wronged, stay alive to sue later. I'm telling you, that's what the ACLU used to tell others until, of course, the Lawyers Guild got in touch with everybody and started heading up their affairs and their legal announcements for these people, giving them their legal advice. The fact of the matter is, don't fight him. It's going to get you hurt or killed. Get him hurt and killed. He did it the week before. That also shows you that there's some idea that he knew what he was doing was wrong, and he was just going to go back and do it again because nothing happened. And he did have a broken rib. He came back and he was on medication. He was a nurse. And now we're supposed to believe, because he was a nurse, that this connotes certain kinds of altruism to this guy, or it gives him, with some sort of way to, like a huge coat or something that will keep away the slings and arrows. No. But would you want him taking care of you? No, I wouldn't. You see, Republicans back the federal. Oh, I know. Republicans back the federal government as much as now. Scary to see so much bootlegging down there. Well, here's the reason. No, these are law enforcement. These people aren't law enforcement. Oh, for God's sake! Did you guys just get here? Is that what happened? Let's listen to the Chicago superintendent of police. He lays it out. He's one of the few who has. Let me take you to the point about I've never seen Republicans back the federal government as much now. Because the person we've entrusted with the federal government is we trust that person. And we didn't trust Joe Biden with the feds because Joe Biden wasn't in charge. Lisa Monaco was in charge and went after using every conceivable kind of everything at their tool at their hands. She went after people who at January 6th, breaking laws to do it. I mean, that's why those people were pardoned. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, somebody who, and knowing that there was so much federal help with that whole riotous situation on January 6th. Yeah, so no, I don't trust implicitly all these people. I don't know what changed. But I do know this. I trust the guy who's making the decisions to use them. So that's all I've got. That's all you can do. Really, that's all you can do. Here, let's listen to the Chicago superintendent one more time explain in words of one syllable how you can't do this.
Our responsibilities when it comes to federal agents, and I've been asked these questions. Agents, ICE, HSI, are officers. They are agents of law enforcement. If you box them in with vehicles, it is reasonable for them to believe that they are being ambushed and that this could end in a deadly situation. And it's reasonable for them to use force based on those conditions. Do not box in any law enforcement officer. You are breaking the law when you do that. And you are putting yourself in danger. Following law enforcement agents around. The question is why? What do you plan on doing? It's also reasonable for them to believe that you're eventually going to do harm to them. If you ram any vehicle, especially that one that contains law enforcement agents, and that's any law enforcement, local, state, federal, county, and you do this intentionally, this is considered deadly force. Deadly force is anything that can cause great bodily harm or death. When you plow into a vehicle that contains law enforcement agents, you're using deadly force. And they can use deadly force in response to stop you.
So those are the facts, folks. And there's lots more to that, but that is quite enough. People name calling and say that he didn't do anything wrong. Alex Preddy didn't do anything wrong. Are you kidding me? You can't resist arrest. You can't interfere. Somebody said, "Oh, you read it wrong. You looked at that video and read it wrong." I'm seeing a guy resist arrest. Why can't you see that? Look at that. He's getting in that guy's right there. There he is. You cannot interfere. You may not like what he's doing. You might like he just pushed your comrade down on the icy ground. But he has the right to do that. He actually does. He can. Because cops have more rights to do their jobs than you have to get in their way with them doing their jobs. That's what's happening. And the thing is that, you know what scares me? Is that there are really some stupid people out here. There are some really dumb people who don't have a clue. And would why do you people say, "Well, you trust Trump." Well, I trust him with the levers of power. Sorry, it's better than what I saw Joe Biden do. Okay, it's better than what I saw Joe Biden do, and all the constitutional rights that were not accorded to people on J6. I was not there, by the way. I knew some people who were there, though. I'd come to find out later. But now look, why is it that you trust to retain in your community someone who's a rapist, someone who's a child, kid diddler. Why would you trust that person more than you do ICE? It takes a special kind of silly to believe that. You can't possibly believe that. But yet people do. People say, well, that's a Hobson's choice. That's not real true choice. It's the only choice you got. It is the only choice you've got. So, what get thrown out of court? I don't even know what you're talking about. Okay. Nope, still got that. So, anyway, so that's it. So one more thing. I want to continue with the guy who wrote the piece about the strategic insurgency that he sees in this whole very, very well-oiled machine that was the Signal chat and the way in which we saw the people operate against ICE and having people there within 2 minutes and that sort of thing. And so this is a special forces officer with multiple rotations who saw this kind of insurgency, said what's unfolding in Minneapolis right now is not a past. It's a low-level insurgency infrastructure built by people who have clearly studied the playbook. Signal groups at 1,000-member cap per zone, dedicated roles, mobile chasers, plate checkers, logging vehicles, data into shared databases. 24/7 dispatch nodes, vectoring assets, salute-style reporting. Size, activity, location, unit, time, and equipment. These are what military people do. And in short, his observation was that they clearly have some military training in this. And as Andrew pointed out, if you want to have counterinsurgency against these guys, who are you going to do? Who are you going to call? The cops? There are no-shows in Minneapolis. Who are you going to call? Because the ICE guys, they just want to do their job and get bad guys out. So who's going to stop them? There you go. All right. No stream on Thursday. And I'll be back on next week. And hang in there, everybody. And look, don't stay stupid about this. Don't stay stupid. Thank you so much for watching and listening to this episode of the Adult in the Room podcast. We do not take you for granted. We appreciate every single person who tunes in every week to listen and watch this program. We're here every Tuesday and Thursday, live streaming on Rumble, and then on every other podcast platform shortly thereafter when we can port it over and get it over there as soon as we can. All the shows can be found at victoriataft.com, where the censorship regime has been banned by me. Follow me on social media at these names: Victoria Taft, the Adult in the Room podcast, and the Victoria Taft Show. Send media inquiries, or any others for that matter, to victoria@victoriataft.com. And here's a big ask. Would you please subscribe, share, like, comment, recommend, and give this program a 5-star rating where you can? We really appreciate it. We do not take that for granted either. Follow my work at, you guessed it, victoriataft.com. PJ Media, I write tons over there. Flamingo Audiobooks, and of course the radio. I don't do this alone. This show is produced and engineered by Overall Media. 1A Cast is responsible for some of the Adult in the Room podcast's imaging. Logo design by Hageman Creative. The Adult in the Room podcast is produced at Flamingo Road Studios. All rights reserved.